Now, from time to time, you will notice that I have to sharpen the chisel, which incidentally is a tungsten tip chisel, and this is a diamond impregnated sharpening stone. And the interesting thing is I carve faster than some people because I don't waste time using a blunt chisel, because most people will just simply do it and they will test the sharpness like that, or they may even go like this to see if they can shave their skin. But that will only tell you if the edge of the chisel is sharp. But I always do this, and people scream and they hate me doing that. Well, what that does, can you see it's not slipping? Now, if I get another chisel, which I'll get in over here, which is not sharpened properly, see, it slides it away. So that means if I carve that, I'll slide all over the stone and I'll lose control. So the real test is to make sure that it digs in like that. Now, if anybody wants to carve and they don't want to do it because they have got to do this thing, they can use a bit of plastic. It's just as well. Small little things like that helps enormously. And you know, you can go to art school and you can get lots of hints and tips on what have we and help. But as I say in Welsh, ysgol brofiad, which I love that, which is how we can translate that, is what you learn through doing is the best teacher of all. And I think I've learned more by doing than anything I was taught in art school, because you make mistakes all the time. If you're human, and I'm human, so I make them. But the problem is then solving them, and that's fun, and it's enjoyable. And if you haven't got an answer, you've got to find it. And I think that's a wonderful thing, because you invent things and you discover things. So I think most of the things I've learned is purely by doing it rather than, and I don't think too much. One thing perhaps I should explain to people, because unfortunately the word calligraphy has been misused for quite a number of years now. People say calligraphy when it isn't calligraphy, and perhaps I should explain what the difference is between what I'm doing here and calligraphy and other forms of lettering. Lettering is the umbrella term for anything to do with letters. So this now you can say is carved lettering, or carved dragon if you wish in this instance. But calligraphy means kalos and graphos. It comes from two words from the Greek, and it means beautiful writing. Well, this is not writing, this is carving. So anything that is calligraphy has to be written, either with a steel pen or, in the olden days of the monks, with a quill. So it is what's loosely called a thick and thin letter, if you wish, done by the way that the pen is held and written. So it is just like what you see in the old manuscripts. So that is what calligraphy is. But people think that anything to do with letters is calligraphy, but it isn't. Calligraphy is just a branch of lettering, as signwriting is a branch of lettering, and carving is a branch of lettering. So this is not calligraphy, it's carving letters. But the important thing is that what you won't see in here is the influence of the pen letter, the calligraphy, on these forms. And if you wrote with two pencils stuck together with a bit of tape, you'll find that you'll produce something similar to this when you have the control on it. So all the letters here may have started off with a pen, right? But then adapted for the chisel, if you want to call it. But its roots are very firmly in the pen letter. And if you look closely at this dragon, when you see that is a calligraphic stroke. It's true. And you have the same thing when it comes down to there. But of course, the pen can't do that without manipulation. Then you've got to change it to suit the material. So the basis is calligraphy, but the execution is not. So very loosely again, is calligraphy is only beautiful writing. So anything that's written is calligraphy, but this is carved, so it's not calligraphy, although it has strong calligraphic influences in the shapes. In calligraphy in particular, more than here in carving, there are so many beautiful works of literature and poetry that is absolutely wonderful for calligraphers to write and to express in ways that's appropriate to the text and to the purpose of the poem. But I have been criticized, and I don't mind admitting to it, by many eminent calligraphers saying that I should be ashamed of myself for writing poetry, out poetry that's done by an inferior poet, not a well-known poet. That they feel I should only write out the works of the most important calligraphers, poets. And they think I'm selling my soul, if you want to inferior work. And that annoys me, because to me, it's the doing that matters and whether you're doing the right thing for the people you're working to. But, you know, for example, I have people coming to me who are not poets, whose English very often is very bad. But this man loves his wife. They've been married for 20 years and he wants her to know how much he loves her, right? And he's written her a poem. And some of these poems, I cringe when I read them, they're so bad. And I feel, why should I, to do this kind of thing? It's terrible. But then I say to myself, well, that's wrong. This chap wants to show his wife how much he loves her. And he's taken the bother from his heart to produce this poem. So does it matter if it's not the best work in the world, if it's come from the heart? And it means a lot to him. So I tend to ignore the wording, and I just think of the love that's behind it, and that gets me through it. And I think that's very important, I think. But lots of professional calligraphers will shoot me for saying that, but then I stick to what I believe in. This is part of a dragon because a client wanted a Welsh connection on this headstone. And they didn't want a conventional dragon, so I designed this one especially for them. So it's very stylized, because I think this style of stylization suits the lettering better than if it was a conventional dragon, because then it would look like a stamp on it rather than a bit of a carving, I hope. But what's nice about this type of dragon is you don't have to worry too much about people complaining that it's not the authentic one. So it's much better in that respect. Gives me a little bit more freedom. Now, you might be wondering, as I mentioned earlier, why this is not a conventional dragon. And as I said earlier, I think this type of thing reflects the qualities of the lettering a bit better. But the reason I haven't done it the typical Welsh dragon is because I hope the purists in Wales won't disown me for saying this thing. But, I think Wales do even better in rugby than they are doing, although they're doing very well at present, but they would even do better still if the Welsh dragon or the Welsh flag was a little more vicious. It's like a pussycat, had no teeth at all, and the purpose of the dragon is to defend our nation. And who's going to be frightened of our dragon on the Welsh flag? It has no strength in it, it has no viciousness. So I'm trying to get a bit of viciousness into it, because I want this dragon to defend the country, not to be there like somebody to stroke. Otherwise I might have put a cat in there. So I don't know what the purists would think of that. But the Welsh flag, the Welsh dragon is a beautiful thing, but it needs more punch. So I hope I've achieved a little bit of more viciousness in that. I'd like to think that this chap will snap his finger off if I've done it correctly. It's not that I'm a vicious person, but I think the dragon needs to be a little bit vicious. Lots of people ask me, how I go about getting the design onto the slate and what are the various processes in the design. I really don't know what I'm doing at the very beginning because I don't know what the problems are. I'm not quite sure what the needs are. But once I get all that in my head, then all the work starts with scribbles on paper, always has been. You can't beat pencil and paper to get the initial designs going. And I will do hundreds. And I literally mean it. This design there, for example, I don't know how many designs are made of it, but dozens and dozens, definitely. And because you're not sure which way to go, shall I bend this way, shall I bend it that way? And the best way of doing is to do it, to find out. And if it doesn't work, do another one. And have the patience and the sticking power to stick with it until something begins to work. Now, when it gets to that scale, depending on the kind of work it is and the purpose of it, I might scan it into my computer sometimes. Because a computer, I don't think, distracts from the craft work at all if you're in control of it. And the computer then can make things heavier, thinner, sharper. And it can save the client a lot of money because I can get so many alternatives very, very, very quickly. But once I've decided which is the right one, then I make the final drawing by hand. So it starts by hand and it finishes by hand. But often the computer will do the variations in between. Then I get it onto the slate, trace it through very often through a tracing paper or the kind of thing you have in, what do you call these things, in carbon papers. I'll get that involved in a minute. And then I'll scratch the design afterwards, but I'm not following the lines. They're just there as a guide. That's the important thing. They're just there to tell me what my extremes are. But I let my eye make the final cut. So if I'm cutting this now and I don't like what's happening, I'll change it. So it's being drawn by the eye at the very last minute. Or if my wrist tells me, no, I can't do that, I will respect it and modify things. So you're involved, in other words, right to the very last second. So the design is not finished until the last tap has been made. And then you see I go back quite a lot. The trouble is you can get in there and get carried away. And it looks very nice to you. Then you step back and say, oh my God, it's too thin, it's too heavy. So I have to see it in relationship to the whole. And this is another thing I always say to students. They don't like it. I tell them all the time, get your bums off that chair. I think it's so important. They sit in front of the damn computers. They visualize things from the few inches between where they're sitting on the screen or the drawing if it's on a piece of paper. And they don't see the whole. And I'm a firm believer they have to get off their chairs and view it from a sensible viewing distance. I used to teach on a regular basis 1 day a week in different art schools. I've taught at Campbell School of Art in London, in Wimbledon School of Art, and in practically most of the colleges or art colleges here in Wales. But I stopped teaching because of the bureaucracies involved, and I just don't go with it. But I still have private lessons and workshops, and I love teaching. I love being with students and helping them to find themselves. And I never ever have told students what to do, because I believe then they'll do what you just told them. They won't think for themselves. And so what I try to do in my teaching is to give students confidence in their own thinking and in their own attitudes, and have faith in that and help them to find that faith. Because I'm a great believer that students in all crafts and in all things in life are capable of doing everything for themselves, given the right guidance. So I'm totally against rules. Flexible rules, yes, but concrete rules, no. Because very often people who give you rules are giving the rules they were given. And then that thing, the danger of disciples come into it. They misunderstood something and hand on the wrong information. So the way I teach is to let people get in there. And for example, when they come down to teach, to do carving, I just give them a chisel. I tell them nothing, because I want to find what they do naturally. And it's surprising how many people will do the right thing or close to the right thing by being left alone, and then I will encourage them to go further. And the best people to teach, and it might surprise you, are young girls. Young girls more than young boys, and certainly better than their parents, because they have no inhibitions. And that's the big, big thing, to get people when they're innocent, totally innocent, and they're aware of their bodies, and they will, they will respond to their bodies. And I don't know what it is about girls, they do it even more than the boys do. And the boys do it better than the parents. And the wives, when they come down here, sometimes want to do a bit of the carving. And they always do it better than the men. Men are the worst, because the male chauvinist pig thing gets in the way. And they don't want their wives to do better than them. They're too conscious. So I'd like to teach, trying to get the consciousness out of their mind, which is very hard work, but I get there. And the reward for me is, as a result of that, is that I produce so many individuals, and that gives me a lot of pleasure. And nobody, and literally nobody that's been taught by me does anything like me. They don't become clones of me in any form. And I think that's very important. And often you find people who's been taught by very great people in different crafts, but you can tell, you can see the influence of the mentors, if you wish, in their work. And that annoys me. It doesn't annoy me, it upsets me, because it stops the self coming through. I always say to students, don't be frightened of making mistakes, because if you are going to be frightened of making mistakes, you'll never do anything, because you make mistakes all the time. So learn to enjoy your mistakes. And I think, was it John Lennon who once said, there's no such thing as mistakes, only solutions. And I think that's something that many students should realize, is to get a problem, now solve it. But then the other thing I try and do in my teaching is to encourage a student not to worry about the failures, not to worry what other people think. Because that usually is their biggest problem. They pack it in because they've done it badly and they're embarrassed by it. And they shouldn't be embarrassed by it. You've just got to go through the learning process and enjoy it. Another thing I think people should realize is that if you do something, well, let's just put it this way. Most people, when they start doing any creative work, has something in their minds about what they want to do, and they can see this beautiful design, whatever it is, beautiful bit of a sculpture, a bit lovely pot, or a bit of lettering or carving or whatever, and they see this wonderful finished design in their mind, and they're thrilled by it. And then they do it, and it turns out to be a disaster. Because they've seen it with their mind's eye, and with hopes and wishful thinking. But when they do it, then they see it with the outer eye, which has no emotions like the inner eye. And then they're unhappy with it. And I tell people, if they're unhappy with their work, they should get a champagne bottle out. Because it's a time to celebrate. And people think I'm nuts when I say that, but I mean it. Because when you do something and you can see mistakes in it, the reason I say that's a period to be happy is because it shows that in your mind you're better than you are down there, and that's something to be happy about. Right? It's when you are happy with everything down there is a time to worry. It means you've got no more to do. You have nothing else to learn. So I think it's a time for joy when you see mistakes, because you're much better than that. And I think that's a wonderful situation to be in.